All right, welcome in. Working through some of the technical difficulties to get this K-State West Virginia preview started, underway, in the right spot. That way, everybody has a good idea of what's going on here. All right, well, we got game number 2 of Big 12 play for the Wildcats tonight. Going to get things started with their road slate. West Virginia is the team on the docket. And look, I was wrong about what I thought we would get from West Virginia over the weekend. I didn't think they would win at Houston. I did not anticipate that, but I also didn't think that they would get their butt kicked by 30 plus points, which they did. So uh, let's just dive into the number one topic here with K-State and West Virginia. West Virginia appears to still be a bad basketball team, even after what has taken place, kind of considering working hard to get all these players eligible or available to play. Is this a must-win game for K-State tonight in terms of big picture and thinking about how the pieces to the puzzle will get you to an NCAA tournament appearance?
I hate saying this two games into the Big 12 play, but it does kind of feel that way. Like it feels like a loss to West Virginia would be kind of catastrophic with how everything is kind of lining up right now, with how West Virginia has been playing. And I believe that this is a road quad 3 game. And like if you know the quadrant system, that it's very hard to play a road game that's a quad 3, especially in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And this is a game where, I kind of said it on the Sunday show where you would like K-State to play well and to look kind of how they did it and similar to UCF. But this is a game where you win, you move on, and you kind of don't care about anything else as long as you end up winning at the end. So it's probably a must win. It at least feels like it because this is as gettable of a road game as you're going to get in the league.
Yeah, I think it is in terms of just searching and trying to figure out the way that this current K-State team is playing. How are you going to be able to go out and find enough other wins? Like there is a world where K-State improves to a level to which this is a game that would turn into you shouldn't lose it, but you can make up for it elsewhere. As K-State is currently constructed, I don't think they're capable of making up for this type of loss somewhere else down the road. So it's important from that standpoint of just get in there, like you said, find a way to exit with a victory, and it really doesn't matter how it looks. Now, that has not been a problem for K-State a lot of this season. Making the wins look pretty, that's been secondary to just trying to scratch and claw your way to a win. They were able to kind of try and make a win look pretty against UCF on Saturday night. That was fun. One of the major elements to that game was the fact that Tyler Perry got hot from 3, kind of saw some flashes of what Jerome Tang, and I think a lot of people expected from him. How confident are you that Tyler Perry could recreate, not necessarily that extent? 6 of 11 was pretty darn good from 3, but for him to provide another consistent shooting experience against West Virginia, who, look, they've had their struggles this year in a lot of different categories. They have some very talented offensive guards of their own, but they've shown a propensity to give up a lot of points in games. You go and look at the last 3 games, West Virginia's given up 81, 78, and 89 points. So it's not like this is some type of team that is just going to overwhelm you with their defense. And I think Fan even talked about it where the style, it's not the same West Virginia that you're used to under Bob Huggins. Like the immense pressure and everything, that's not really a thing with this team.
Yeah, this isn't your brother's West Virginia team. They don't do anything like particularly well that like you expect them to do like with a West Virginia basketball team of the last 10 years probably. But with Tyler Perry, like I feel like he's kind of turned a corner, and you could see the light kind of click on during the UCF second half. I said that I thought that he was having a lot more fun than he had the last probably 2 months of games, where he just looked a lot more relaxed and comfortable, and was just letting it fly and wasn't really trying too hard. There was that one where he did pass it up, but then every other time that he had space, he was letting it fly. And it's not like West Virginia is a great 3-point defense. How much of that, though, is luck? I don't know. But if it keeps happening to a team, I think it's easy to say that they're not a good 3-point defense, and their opposing teams are shooting 33.6% from three on West Virginia this season, and teams are also shooting a lot of threes on West Virginia, which is very interesting. So we'll see how it goes. I think that you'll know with Tyler Perry probably within the first 5 to 10 minutes, because you would like him to build off of a strong second half and not have to just turn it on in the second half like he has been. But I mean, we'll see. This is such a strange game to me. Like, West Virginia on the road has been such a house of horrors for K-State recently.
Yes.
Is that like I don't even remember a time, even when K-State has won in Morgantown, where they've really played particularly well. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks, because with all of the West Virginia struggles, they are still very good at home typically. But I mean, that we'll see. This is a game where I think later on in the year, you could easily probably chalk this up as a W with how West Virginia's season looks, how it's going to go. But after they just got their butts handed to them, I could see them coming out kind of guns blazing and potentially playing one of their best games of the year.
Yeah, you just don't know what to expect with West Virginia, because there's a lot of volatility to the talent on their roster. And like, I thought this when they were assembling the roster this offseason, where you look at the guys that they're bringing in, it's like, okay, you've got some major boom or bust guys. And I mean, the chief of that volatility would be a guy like Kirk Kriisa, who has only been able to play in 5 games now. And like, I think he was very overrated at Arizona. And some people would agree, some people wouldn't. It's just about when did you see Kirk Kriisa play? How big of a threat do you think he actually is? But he's a volatile guy. As we know, Raekwon Battle is a guy that is going to be able to go out and score a lot of points every now and then. You look at that, and he struggled against Houston. He had 3 high scoring games, and then the low scoring game. He can do a lot. And then they've at least in some ways been able to go through and supplement some of the scoring and other action that's taken place on their team with a little bit more consistent players. But I think that's the biggest thing here. And it's something that is kind of uncontrollable for K-State, and I wrote about it in the pick and preview, but a lot of winning this game for K-State, because I think K-State is the better team than West Virginia. And I think West Virginia has proven that they are so bad that, it's tough for West Virginia to not lose games right now. But the one way that I think West Virginia can win tonight is, K-State can come out and play sloppy, but I would like to think that's behind them because it's Big 12 play and all this other stuff, is just if West Virginia comes out and has guys that, hey, it's their night. And it sounds like a really simple thing, but I think with a team as bad as West Virginia is and as tricky as Morgantown has been for K-State in recent years, well, really since West Virginia came to the Big 12, it's been tricky. I really think that's a big part of tonight's game. And I think the one way to try and, make a dent in that is you're going to have to rely on your defense, which we talked about over the weekend. But the K-State defense is the real deal now. You can question a lot of other things that have gone on with this team to start the season, but it's apparent that K-State's defense is a legit part of this thing that can kind of get you in the right direction. And a big part of that would be Cam Carter. So I think, you're going to rely on those guys to defend as well as they can tonight. And if you have to grind out a, 59 to 55 win or something, you do it. Although the track record this season would suggest that that's not where these teams are going to play this evening.
No, like it's the hard part about West Virginia. And like, I kind of wanted to say this on the Sunday show, but just it slipped my mind, is that they have a lot of good pieces, but they are not a good like assembled team. Like, they have a bunch of guys that are like, okay, he's really talented, but like all together they don't fit well. Like, Raekwon Battle is kind of a chucker. He's more of a volume scorer.
Yes.
Kirk Kriisa, you don't know what you're going to get, because some nights he looks amazing and some nights he'll just turn the ball over like at will. And Akok had played like 2 games the last 2 years and goes to West Virginia. Like, so they have so many pieces that you're like, how in the world would this team fit? And I think you're kind of seeing that. And now with Bob Huggins not being there, you're kind of seeing the wheels kind of fall off a little bit. And like it sucks from the perspective of like we're doing a preview show and we're like we have no idea what to expect out of this West Virginia team. Like, and I'm not sure if anybody covering West Virginia knows what to expect out of this team because they're so volatile. Like at their best, if they get everybody playing well and playing together, you could say that this West Virginia team could probably beat anybody in the Big 12 outside of probably KU and Houston. But at their worst, I mean, they lost to Radford.
Yeah, no, that you. I mean, they have bad losses on their schedule. They played Bellarmine close at home this season, and they also lost to Monmouth to start the year, their second game, and they were down against Missouri State at halftime. So this is not a good team. And honestly, I mean, you talk about how the roster's been constructed. I would liken it to why I don't think Colorado football can be successful long term with Deion Sanders is you can build a roster that is filled with talent. And yes, to some extent, like it will overcome some things. But if you have talented knuckleheads and a high majority of your team is built like that, you're going to get the outcome that knuckleheads would provide you. And I use that as a much friendlier term to what I normally would say about the type of player that I think Deion Sanders or, West Virginia has grabbed this year. And one of the guys that seemingly had been maybe that kind of calming and just like a legit good player was Jesse Edwards, who has been out since mid-December. He's out again tonight, so K-State doesn't have to deal with probably the most dangerous aspect of West Virginia's lineup.
Yes, he's by far their best player.
So that's a benefit to K-State, and that's why this is seemingly another game that as long as you don't get that wildly uncontrollable element like what took place with anybody coming in and shooting the lights out, like this is another game that's just about K-State goes out and plays hard and well enough and does the little things, then you're good to go. And one of the guys that has been doing that and making an impact in some way, wildly enough, is Dorian Finister, who I did not at any point this year think that we would be talking about him in some serious way of being a contributor. And again, statistically and like stuff that actually computes in people's brains, he's not going to be productive for K-State this year. But he finds himself on the floor currently because, as we saw with some of the video during the UCF game, the guy busts his butt. He gets back. He does some smart things, which, as everybody seems to know, I think this team lacks at times. So, I mean, the fact that he's actually getting actual minutes this year has been surprising. I guess that goes to one of the comments on the YouTube asking who are the surprise player for this year's team is, good or bad. So I'll let you answer that before we get out of here with our predictions.
Surprise in a good way, I think I would say Cam Carter, because I think that we all kind of expected him to take a jump, and we all knew that he was going to take a jump. But I think that everybody is kind of surprised of how he's been playing. I mean, he's probably not first team all Big 12 selection right now if the season was to end, but he's probably second. Like he definitely have an argument for second. Surprise in a bad way. I will only say this guy because he hasn't been playing a lot, and that's a surprise in a bad way for me. Is I thought that RJ Jones would be the freshman guard that would be most ready to play. And I'm more surprised in a bad way that he hasn't been able to see the floor because he's been kind of in the doghouse recently. So, I mean, I feel like that has been kind of a surprise in a bad way because I don't think that anybody that's like currently playing has really surprised me in a bad way.
I would maybe argue Tyler Perry shooting through the first majority of the season was wildly under what I would have expected. My good surprise this year, honestly, has probably been Will McNair. Part of it is because of the role that he's been forced into, but after like 3 games, he had already given K-State more than I ever expected from him this season. Like I didn't anticipate, number one, that he'd be starting games and that he would actually have some strong scoring outputs. So that would be the guy that I throw on there as Will McNair. But in terms of the freshmen, like I figured that Day Ames would probably be the guy that could make the most impact. The thing is, none of the 3 freshmen are playing particularly well right now. Like Michaela Rich and RJ Jones aren't getting to see the floor a ton. And Day-Day Ames is really only seeing the floor out of necessity for how this team needs to operate and run their offense. He hasn't been particularly good. And that's one of those things where you would hope that at some point, and maybe it's tonight in Morgantown, one or two of those guys can see the floor and actually get something to click, because I think until you get that, the depth isn't really going to build out the way K-State needs it to be fully successful this year. You're just waiting for things to kind of click for a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds, and it may not ever happen this year. And that might be the downfall of K-State, is the fact that your roster got pushed into a position where you're having to rely on too many guys that you shouldn't have to rely on in their first year of college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to he's kind of a volatile person when you talk about like how people view him now, but it goes back to like what Fran Fraschilla has always said about freshmen. And like the best thing about freshmen is that they become sophomores.
Yeah. True.
And I mean, you're kind of seeing that with K-State right now, because the freshmen are talented, but we're still not seeing everything like kind of click for them as it probably would next year. And I think like in an ideal world, you would have had Quez Glover and Naquan Tomlin, and you wouldn't have to be playing Day-Day Ames a ton of minutes, and you wouldn't have to be like, okay, well, we probably need to get RJ Jones or Michaela Bridge to come around to be able to play. And you probably wouldn't be like the seventh guy. You probably would be more like, okay, we can go Day-Day Ames probably as a seventh player instead of like as a sixth man, and then have Dorian Finister be the seventh guy. It's like it's kind of a big mess right now, rotation wise, because they just haven't had their full roster. I mean, that it sounds like an excuse, but it's the truth. Like, they're trying to force guys to really grow up as the season has gone on. And I think that we'll see the dividends probably later on in like February and March, but there are going to be some head scratching moments. I mean, we saw, I think it was at one point in the Providence game with like 3 or 4 minutes to go, that all three of Michaela Bridge, RJ Jones, and Day-Day Ames were on the floor at the same time. And RJ Jones had like what looked to be like a catastrophic turnover at the time, but K-State eventually recovered from that. So like, you'll probably still get those moments going forward, but I think that you'll see kind of the dividends of playing all these guys near the end of the season, and you'll really see it, I think, next year. Like I would expect Day-Day Ames to take a huge jump next year.
That would be the hope. All right, prediction time for tonight. I assume you're taking the Cats to win this, even though we already talked about just how not fun the history in Morgantown is.
Oh yeah, well I'll go K-State wins. I'll go a little more high scoring than you did. I'll say 75-68. Cats.
Okay. Yeah, I think these teams are going to play an ugly game tonight. I said 69-59. I very easily could see it going higher than that, just based on how West Virginia has played recently, and if the offense is kind of moving in a good direction for K-State, we'll see. But yeah, the Wildcats are 9-3 in Morgantown since they've started playing this series. So, and we all remember last year's showdown there. It didn't go very well for K-State, but the game didn't matter. Desi Sills wasn't there. It was a whole ordeal. So we will be. Yeah, go ahead.
The last two times K-State's played in Morgantown outside of this year, K-State had been like severely outmanned, because
True.
There was also the year that Shane Southwell was the head coach and K-State had like 7 guys.
Yeah. I mean, so the last time K-State would have won Morgantown would be the 2019 team,
I
which
believe so.
If you remember that, I don't think that was a particularly pretty game that K-State played. I think it was just, hey, they found a way to grind it out and win, which was a big deal for that team, because talking about how important and tough Morgantown has been for K-State, that class, they hadn't won a game in Morgantown, so they were trying to get that done, and they did it on the way to a Big 12 title. So that will do it for Drew and I. I will for sure be back after the game tonight. Maybe Drew or DY will be with me. DY not in Morgantown. The giant snowstorm that took over the state prevented him from getting there, which a little bit of a bummer. But I would also say that the headache that is traveling to Morgantown, West Virginia, especially for just one basketball game in the midweek, he probably actually dodged a bullet there. Although he was without power at least one point this morning. So I don't know that he's necessarily living it up, staying in Manhattan throughout all of this. But we wish him the best. We wish everybody watching this the best. And we certainly wish the Cats the best tonight on the road against West Virginia. So for Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thank you for watching K-State Online.